But before going into that, I would like to say that there's been, I put it here 30 years, but in reality it's more than 40 years. Congress has failed to deliver transformative change to the country's immigration system. The last time Congress did something was in '86 with a a different move in which some immigrants at the moment in '86 and '85 benefit from what it was called at the moment the amnesty, or a way to protect people from deportation and to provide a legal status to continue to reside in the United States. And it was very controversial because also that law added some punitive to the already existing punitive immigration laws of the United States. The second time Congress did something, it was again to punish. This time did not provided no relief to any populations residing without immigration status at the moment. It was 1994, 1996. A bill signed into law by then President Bill Clinton that cemented or gave shape to what we all are fighting right now, that we are outraged because we're seeing children in cages, we are outraged because we're seeing everyday deportation flights to Haiti, that we are concerned because the health of undocumented women asylum seekers' health is at risk because they are object of medical procedures without their consent. All of that is happening because of the 1996 laws that unfortunately were done to cause harm, criminalize, and to make money out of detaining undocumented people, and again, people that is seeking safety in the United States. Immigrant, but regardless of how they're terrible have been the past 40, 30 years, immigrant people and allies such as the faith-based leaders have organized again and again to change and said that the time is now. And we are in another moment in which we have a Democrat president, House of Representatives is in the Democratic hands, and a 50-50 power share in the Senate. So again, we are saying the time is now to do some changes. And every legislative move, every legislative vehicle or bill will help us to move closer to what we want, to provide permanent protections or citizenship to all immigrants and their families. What is TPS? The program, the acronym stands for Temporary Protected Status. It is a temporary immigration status provided to nationals of certain countries experiencing problems that make it difficult for us or unsafe to return if we are deported. TPS has been a lifeline to hundreds of thousands of individuals already in the United States when problems in our home countries make it difficult for our departure. And Congress created the temporary protected status in 1990s, in the 1990s. Who has the authority to designate a country for TPS? At that moment, at the very first TPS, Congress gave the power to the Attorney General. With the time and years after, the power was transitioned to the Secretary of Homeland Security with the consultation of the Secretary of State, and of course, also with the approval of the President. But officially, the power is in the hands of the Secretary of Homeland Security. How long a TPS designation can be done? It can, according to the TPS Act or the TPS law, can be provided for 6, 12, or 18 months. And never in the history of the program have been granted beyond 18 months of protection, but 6 months. The first TPS protection was granted actually for 12 months. And who is eligible for TPS? A national, someone who is from the designated country, who has been continuously residing in the United States, and the person can prove that he have been residing continuously in the United States, and it was already in the United States at the moment of the designation of the country. And the last question to discuss in this slide is, does TPS create a path to permanent residency or citizenship? No. From the beginning, Congress said that this will be a temporary, because at the moment, and soon in the next slide, we're going to be discussing that. At the moment, the advocates, leaders, and directly impacted folks were asking them not to return them because they will be facing immediate harm if deported back to El Salvador. And to be very specific on who can be designated and who is eligible, let me tell you with my story. I was in the United States, as I said, I arrived in 2000, but in 2001, there were two very strong earthquakes. At the moment, I was residing in New York, in the suburbs, in Long Island. And I had already a year of continuous residence in the United States, undocumented. I had my documentation proving that I am from El Salvador, and also through the years I was able to save. I didn't know that at some point that will help me, but just to make sure that my landlord or my landlady won't give me any issues. I was saving every time I was paying rent, so that also helped me. And I had a library card that, because I love libraries, so that also helped me to prove that I had been present in the United States for more than about a year already. And I was, as I said, at the moment of the designation, it was under the administration of Bush son, the administration of W. Bush, that it was designated. It was in March 2001 that we had the official designation. So I needed to go to background checks. There's several questions that we needed to answer in order to prove that we don't have any criminal record or something that will disqualify us or disqualify me at the moment to get the designation of the relief for TPS. And at that very moment that I applied, the cost of the application, it was $125. Today is a little bit more than $500. Now about the solidarity, and this is the part I wanted to go into a little bit more in details with you all, because as I said, many of you perhaps were part of that movement. El Salvador faced a very tragic moment in our history in the 60s, 70s that evolved into eventually a civil war. It was called civil war, but in reality it was a military intervention funded by the United States. Although the history of inequality, repression, and poverty started way beyond the 60s and 70s, we can go back to the 1930s when the then military government of President Martinez ordered the assassination of several thousands of indigenous people that were organizing, asking for a more fair land use and the right to own land, to have their own crops and grow their own food and have a space for caring of their animals to contribute to the economy in El Salvador. So years of repression ended on organized communities in El Salvador. Teachers, union workers, men and women in construction, men and women in sweatshops, men and women working in different areas, hardworking families, organized, students including, and what we call las catequistas, or lay people in the Catholic Church, also organized to make sure that in the In the church, the people not only went to get the work and to get their faith stronger, but also knowing why we are getting poor every day, or why we are seeing so much repression on the streets. So thousands, but the moment of the first TPS, is known that over 300,000 people just from El Salvador migrated, seeking safety, avoiding to be killed by either the military or the guerrilla. The majority were young men and women and children as well, unaccompanied, a lot of unaccompanied minors. My boss, Oscar Chacon, was an unaccompanied minor at that moment. He was 15, 16 years old when he was forced to migrate to try to save his life, because he was a student organizing in high school to make sure that other students understood why they needed also to be part of the putting pressure on the government to create a more fair way of life, and also demanding the United States to continue to fund the military governments. TPS in the 80s and 90s, it is in the 90s when it's officially created, it's proof that what solidarity can do when we all come together. The first picture of the upper right side is a group of people in Los Angeles mobilizing in support of Salvadorians fleeing violence in El Salvador. Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Maryland, in New York, where at the moment in the 80s, big pockets of where Salvadorians look for safety. The majority of Salvadorians were applying for asylum. More than 80 to 90% of those asylum applications were denied. And this is how the whole organizing of asylum seekers started, to make sure that they had the right to counsel and to get a lawyer to request asylum, but also faith leaders understanding that if one of us is suffering, all of us suffers, regardless of not being born in El Salvador. All the asylum seekers, Salvadorian asylum seekers, came with the organizing experience, community organizing experience. They were able also to engage with more Salvadorians and other non-immigrants, meaning people born from immigrant parents, that also were concerned about what was happening in El Salvador at the moment. And religious leaders were also connected, because they knew that back in El Salvador, as I said, the catechistas or lay people were also playing a key role, making sure that they were denouncing all of the injustices. One of those leaders at the moment in Monsignor Romero, who was killed in the 80s, he started a very young age his mission, his faith mission, but it was more in between the 1975 to 79, when he was a little bit more close to the church side, that he was announcing the repression against people organizing for a better life. So the picture at the bottom and the right side is people commemorating the legacy of Monsignor Romero, who was assassinated by a sniper, trained, and also we don't know if received anything, resources from US and anti-guerrilla groups. So all of this, it was very important to put pressure to Congress, vigils, fasting days, where were many days people fasting, marches, letters, calling days. We didn't have Twitter or Facebook at the moment, so everything happened on the streets. It was going to marches and making sure that there were pickets in areas where people in decisions with power in their hands in the United States also do something to protect the Salvadoreños, and until TPS was created. Moving fast forward to the TPS right now, as we know it, a timeline also, moments in which the TPS community has been struggling to continue to be protected starts in, not only starts with the Obama administration. Prior to Obama, the Bushes also cancel some of designation of TPS. Several of the designations after El Salvador, there were many African countries who were able to receive the TPS relief based on either civil unrest or war, natural disasters, or epidemics, pandemics. Pandemics right now, lots of countries will qualify for this relief. But focusing in the past 5 years, 5 to 6 years. In 2016, then President Obama canceled the relief for Sierra Leone, Guinea, and Liberia, countries that were designated for what I said, natural disasters, pandemic, even famine. USCIS in 2017, under the Trump administration, decides to cancel the relief for TPS for Haiti. First announced a 6-month extension, and instead of giving them 18 months, that raised a red flag. And also there were information that leaked into the media that the Trump administration was trying to criminalize or look for some information to make Haitians to look bad, bad people, criminals, or people that was benefiting from public charge. In 2018, by the end 2017, the TPS for Honduras and Nicaragua was announced. Nicaragua was canceled immediately in November. They were given only 12 months. Honduras was given 6 months. That also raised now the flag that is not just the Haitians. Central American countries can be also be next. People from Honduras said no, because we have a good relationship with the United States and El Salvador, we are not going to get cancellations. And it happened. 2018, Honduras, El Salvador received a cancellation. Following them, there were 3 more countries, Nepal, Sudan, and let's say I'm missing one more, and Haiti officially. It was canceled also in 2018. And as soon as the cancellations of El Salvador happened, which is the largest population, we are over 200,000 people with TPS, there were several lawsuits on behalf of Haiti, El Salvador, and Nepal at that moment, and Nicaragua. Honduras was still pending the cancellation. So the first lawsuit was submitted in February 2018, followed by March 2018. This is a quick timeline or where the lawsuits are from the beginning. That the first the second lawsuit, which is the Ramos versus Nielsen. Ramos is the family demanding the Nielsen, then Secretary of Homeland Security, because of the cancellation of TPS. It was submitted in the Ninth Circuit of California, a very progressive. The judge, Edward Chen, issued a preliminary order on behalf of the Ramos family and all other plaintiffs. And since then, the ball has been rolling in appeal courts. The Trump administration decided to move the case to the Southern California Court of Appeals because it's a more conservative. There were 2 judges appointed one by him and the other by Bush, and one Democrat judge appointed by a Democrat president during Obama. So after a blow in the Courts of Appeals in Pasadena, we are now waiting for the Department of Homeland Security. Somewhere from now or April 19, the DHS Secretary Mayorkas should be deciding what to do with the Ramos case, meaning terminating or reinstating the relief for the 6 countries that have been suspended, that are still pending the cancellation because of the lawsuit, the Ramos. The significance of this, we know there is political partisanship agenda to engulf all the voters that elected Trump, and also very conservative Republicans. What are the implications of in the TPS holders' lives? We have been in a very uncertain scenario, living a day, basically every day, uncertainty in our workplaces, unable to study for folks who were studying, the risk of detention and deportation, depending if you live in Texas and Florida, where the laws are very anti-immigrant, and if you're in this situation in which we no longer have a work permit or submitting applications again to continue to have TPS, but the only thing we have is a paper that we download from the USCIS website. It creates a lot of anxiety. Not a lot of people knows about what's happening with the Ramos case. What is TPS? I'm telling you this, and I'm sure you have tons of questions right now. So imagine anyone from enforcement officers, employers, and or anyone that who wants me to clarify, Yanira, what is your status, or my employer. Luckily, my employer is fighting for TPS, so I don't have to be clarifying them that I still have a relief. What we all can do, go on record, speak on support of TPS holders. As I mentioned at the beginning, solidarity made a difference. Without solidarity, TPS would not exist. Without solidarity, we wouldn't have the tools to put pressure on elected officials and also members of Congress and the executive branch. Remember, all of them, everyone are faith people. So we need to appeal to the values that they stand for, and use social media. And I know that not everyone decides to use social media. Sometimes it's something that we decide not to do because of our mental health, to stay away from social media, but is right now, because of COVID, is one of the most effective ways to make our points heard. Twitter it's been used a lot for making the case to communicate our demands, but also it never out of, it's always very pertinent to organize days of prayers, making calls, send a video of yourself to your elected officials, asking them to protect TPS holders and DACA recipients. I added here DACA because DACA and TPS holders, we are in the same uncertain situation. What we can do particularly in this moment, asking members of the Senate, asking Durbin and Duckworth to vote in support of the Secure Act, mostly Durbin. He is the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and it's where the Secure Act, one of the bills that is currently in the floor to provide permanent protection, permanent residency for TPS holders, is stuck in the very committee that Durbin chairs. So we need to call him and tell, we appreciate your leadership for all these many years, but we want you to move that and make sure that you bring on board Graham, you bring on board McConnell, and you need 60 votes. So make sure that you work hard right now, Durbin, to get those 10 votes to get the Secure Act passed. HR 6, which is the bigger version of the Secure Act, because it protects DACA holders and DD recipients. It should be, it was already voted in favor in the House. It shouldn't go through committees in the Senate, so it can go straight to the floor, but it depends on the leadership and Schumer and Durbin to make sure that it comes to the floor, but also to discuss that with the minority. And although the House already voted, it doesn't mean they are out of the hook. They still need to be our champions who use their power to put pressure on their colleagues in the Democratic Party. And also, if there are Republicans that are sympathetic to TPS and DACA, make sure that they speak up. And locally, make sure that your local governments, they stop signing agreements with ICE and CBP for raids, new detention centers, or making sure that your municipalities or state legislatures don't move legislation that will increase the risk to be stopped, detained, or deported. So while the federal government is not doing what they need to do, local, state, city governments can also help creating those walls of support. Quickly, because we are at time, the Dream and Promise Act, which is what I mentioned that just passed the House, it will provide relief for 4.4 million people if voted in favor by the Senate. Already passed the House with 218 votes in support. In March 14th, as I said, it's waiting for the Senate, for the leadership to bring it to the floor and vote. It will provide immediate permanent residency to TPS, DACA, and DD recipients. And for folks who could ever benefit from DACA, it will create a temporary protected status, but not just 18 months. It will provide, if I am not wrong, about 5 years of temporary protection, which is way better than 18 months. And there are, unfortunately, this bill is not perfect. Includes some restrictions, meaning some language provisions that will leave out of permanent residency or temporary protected status for young people who in the past committed lower felonies. So if we know, usually most of the cases that on racial profiling or things related to unjustly racial profiling against our youth are Black, brown. So we're still fighting for the Senate to make sure that if they hear it, that they remove that language. In the Secure Act, again, as I said, it was introduced, this one by 2 senators, Carding and Van Hollen from Maryland, because the TPS population is very large there. And they have been championing many issues, many things related to in support of TPS. And the bill will provide permanent protections for TPS and DED holders. You may have heard that Venezuelans, they have now TPS and DED. DED, which is the Fair Enforcement Departure, is very similar to TPS, but it's not an act, it's not a law, but provide the same benefits, work permit, protections against deportation. So now Venezuelans can either request DED or TPS, and under both, they will qualify. If the Secure Act is passed, they will also benefit from permanent residency, regardless of being just granted the status. Trump granted DED in December last year, and Biden just granted the designation of TPS for Venezuela on March 9. So that, which is good. For the sake of time, I'm gonna run into this. You're gonna receive a copy of my presentation, but this is an example of the message that you can use for calling Senator Durbin and Duckworth and requesting them specifically to use their leadership to pass the Secure Act to protect TPS holders, but also to move advance HR 6 in the floor of the Senate. What we have been done as Alianza Américas, sharing the stories of people that impacted by TPS in the different areas of work where they are, in construction or in meat packing, cleaning, making sure that hospitals are disinfected, where doctors and nurses can continue to save our communities and provide them support from COVID relief, from COVID. So with that, I'm gonna end so that we can open to questions. And again, I know I have run basically 30 years of the history of TPS and more than 10 years in advocacy on permanent residency for TPS holders. So Juan Carlos, please take the floor.
No. Well, thank you, Yanira. It's I know it's not a whole lot of time, but I think it's good. And I did choose to record this so we could share it and keep it and have that good information. And I appreciate what you did in this short time. We do have a question to begin with here. This is from Linda Eastwood. Please talk further about unable to study. Is that inability only once TPS is fully lost, or is it the current uncertainty also making it difficult to study or to work, even while TPS has not been withdrawn?
Yeah, what is happening is that our work permit, whenever it's being issued, it has an expiration date on the face of the card. So that expiration date matches the length of the new extension. And because of the Ramos versus Nielsen lawsuit, we haven't had the chance to file applications to request new employment authorizations or to receive paperwork from the USCIS with their logo and that makes it official, and it says Yanira is protected for 12 more months. So in order to have also my employment authorization document, which is what it helps in many places for my employer, to renew my driver license, expires every time that expires the face of the card of the employment authorization document. And in the case of institutions, educational institutions, the person has to go to a lot of red tape in order to justify that he continue to have a valid status and to continue their studies. One thing is that TPS, we don't qualify for in-state tuition. Everything is out of our pockets. So versus DACA recipients, that not in every state, they also have some barriers in some states, but in others they qualify for in-state tuition. So that's what I mean, unable to study, but it doesn't mean that they will never continue to study, but it gives a lot of troubles for the person to start the cycle, the next cycle on time, because they need all of the steps that the person needs to take in order to demonstrate to the authorities in the school, the university, that he continued to have status.
Thank you. We have another question. How close do you work with Centro Romero?
They are our members. They also are founding members of Alianza Américas, and they have been very active in the issues of TPS. We are something that I forgot to add, and thank you for the person who just said Centro Romero. Centro Romero has been very most active in a new phase that we are doing regarding TPS. We are requesting a new TPS designation for El Salvador, Honduras, Nicaragua, and Guatemala as a consequence of the 2020 hurricanes, ETA and Ayora. So Centro Romero has been making calls, but also educating elected officials about how many Central Americans can potentially benefit, for instance, nationally. And speaking on this, Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Guatemala, and also Haiti, because of the current situation, we are asking for a new designation for Haiti. Just in the 5 countries, over 1 million people may benefit from a new designation. And as you see, although we have a new administration, deportation flights are not stopping. The enforcement apparatus continue to function with the same policies that implemented Trump, and still the Biden administration is still having a hard time to change, to undo all of the changes that the prior president did. So yes, the answer is yes. And this is how we're collaborating in one of the many areas that we are collaborating with Centro Romero.
I have a question. Those individuals with TPS, I'm sure, I mean, I don't know of any stories myself, but since you are so involved with the work personally and professionally, have you known of any deportations that have taken place unlawfully of people with TPS status, and what has happened in those types of cases? What kind of help could those individuals receive, or have they received?
Thank you for that question. More than deportations is self-deportations and kind of self-deportation. When Haiti learned about that they were giving only 6 months, everyone freaked out. 18,000 Haitians immediately left the United States towards Canada. 90% of the people who flew to Canada seeking safety as asylum seekers, immediately deported to Haiti because they were not following Canada's protocols for requesting asylum. Very few people made it that they were able to successfully get asylum status. In the case of Honduras, which is the other country, we have learned that they have taken unfortunate decisions. A lot of them, they said, no, now that they canceled TPS, with the first 6 months, it happened the same situation. A lot of people freaked out because they were given 6 and not 18 months. And people who had their savings, they said, no, we're next. Why we bother? I'm just leaving. I'm going back to Honduras. So I don't want to be, I don't want to be end up in a detention center or suffering anything related to deportation. So people took their savings, packed, and left. So, which is sad. And others decided to leave. I learned from a case, this guy, he went to Spain with the hope of getting double nationality so that to be protected in Spain. It happens that he was unsuccessful in getting the Spaniard nationality, and now he's undocumented in Spain, and he lost his TPS because he left without a parole, which is something that I forgot to mention, that in addition to having a work permit and employing Social Security and protection against deportation, we can also request an advance parole to travel in case of emergency or a significant situation that demands our presence in our country of origin. So this young man who left for Spain, he left without an advance parole. And like these cases that people decided they just gave up and said, no, there's nothing else that we can do. There are a good, not dozens of cases I know. And in the case of the delays of DHS communicating that we have a new auto extension under the lawsuit, the Ramos lawsuit, people requested advance parole. Still, we can request, but it's always difficult. Even if you travel with an advance parole, they can send you out and you have a permit to live. But if you come back, the chances that you get an immigration agent, staffer, that says they have a lot of discretion, they can say, we are not gonna need you back. So a lot of people who left to El Salvador because they needed to be taking care of family matters, they left without having a current employment authorization document, and that created issues. They're still fighting to come back because they went out with advance parole. But again, nothing of this would be happening in the first place if none of the countries were canceled for the TPS relief. Oh yes, so we haven't heard about any one case, but we don't know the specifics. The man is from Nebraska, that he was deported back, and he's from El Salvador. We don't know the specifics, the reasons why he was deported, but he was at the time a TPS holder.
Thank you. Another question, please elaborate on the hopes and frustrations with the Biden administration versus the Trump administration.
What the hope is that Biden said from the beginning, I'm going to make sure that TPS holders are not deported, right? So the Trump just throw his lawyers to the Ninth Circuit and make sure that the case first is dismissed, and second of all, move to the Southern Court of California, where he has more power in order to get a decision in favor of the government. So the difference with the Biden administration is that he said, I'm going to do all what is possible to make sure that they are not deported. But let me tell you one thing. The last time that we heard about the Ramos case, it was in it was last year. It was in the December. The case in the full panel of the the ninth circuit, not just the two Republicans and the one Democrat in the Southern California. The full panel, I think, is comprised by 10 or 9 judges, north and south of the California district. So they decided to hear the case, and they said, we decide to hear, and now, but the government has the chance to say, we want the case terminated here, we want to cancel, because the previous decision of the court said the current administration has the right to decide whatever they think is best for the future of these countries, either cancel or reinstate. So now that the full panel that said we want to hear it, the government, as being part of the demand, they had to speak up. So we are waiting. We've been waiting since last year. Now with the new administration, the DHS has until April 19 to say one or the other. Cancellation, which we know is not going to happen, or redesignation of the TPS. And in case of the new designations, we saw Venezuela, we saw now Myanmar, which is prior Burma with new TPS first designations. So although we applaud that these countries have been designated, we have been pushing the administration since last year when he won, when he was president-elect, that he should be issuing immediately a new TPS designation, and we are still waiting. We have a petition that I'm gonna copy in the chat, asking the administration, the current administration, to grant a new TPS for these Central American countries and Haiti. What was the other question, Juan Carlos?
Oh, there's a couple more questions, but well, the hopes and frustrations, you did answer that, the frustration, I think, with the Biden administration. If there could be, as you suggest, a new TPS designation for countries hit by ETA and IOTA, would that TPS apply only to people already in the U.S., or would it apply to the many newly arriving?
It will only apply for people already in the U.S. And this is why I share my story, that I was already here. Well, now I'm living in Puerto Rico, which is a colony of the United States. But at the moment I was living in New York. So I was present at the moment of the earthquake in El Salvador. I was present in the United States at the moment of the designation, which was March 2001. It wasn't immediately that the government designated TPS. It took about 2 months after the disaster. And then I wasn't immediately granted TPS. I needed to file an application, wait about a month or more to get a receipt saying that they already received my application, and then a couple of more weeks to hear back that they have approved my case. So right now, Venezuelans and people from Burma, they are sending their application, but they still don't have TPS status. The DD is different. They don't have to send any documentation. But yes, the people, if granted new designation, is people residing here, and that's what I said, that about 1 million people from the 5 countries, including Haiti, might benefit from the designation, including us, the ones who are with the old designation in waiting a pending decision on the Ramos case.
Thank you. Another question here. How many Salvadorans are living in the United States, and what % of that have been granted TPS? And we also have a thank you from Pastor Gutierrez. Thank you for recognizing Puerto Rico as a colony.
Thank you. We are a little bit more than 3 million currently Salvadorians in the U.S. But from those 3 millions, we still need to figure how many are naturalized citizens or permanent residents that they benefit from 1986 to 1985 amnesty, and also how many of those 3 millions are the TPS holders. One thing I can tell you is that, those 3 million people, we send over $5 billion in remittances to El Salvador.
Wow. Any other questions, folks? We have probably time for one more, and we do have the petition that Yanira just placed in the chat. Thank you, Yanira. I am, again, as I shared, I am recording this presentation, and I will share it with you folks, and I will also make sure that I share this petition. Other questions?
But I just wanted to reiterate that for me, as the solidarity movement gave life to what TPS is, and TPS saved life, saved thousands of lives back in the 90s, and continue to save lives in the present time. Nobody thought at the moment of fighting for protections for Salvadorians at the moment that it will have a ripple effect to Syria, Nepal, many African countries. And so again, thank you for that dedicated work with the solidarity.
Thank you, Yanira. You shared the petition with just the panelists, but I shared it with the entire group now.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, no problem. I know you're busy trying to speak and do that at the same time. We do appreciate, again, your time and all your knowledge, and we hope to hear from you again. Thank you for everything you shared, and we'll join you.
We still need you, everyone.
Yeah,
We still need
yes.
you. Elected officials still believe in that power, that influential power that you have, because behind you, behind the 13 people that are connected right now, and the others that will be watching the recordings, are other dozens of faith community leaders and community members that understand that the power of advocacy and solidarity and the connection of the faith values with elected officials makes a difference. So we do believe that we can do something, but it's not going to be easy. Several of the bills that are right now that I haven't covered in this conversation might not make it, but the more pressure we do, the better. So you have a very influential and key person in your state. So Durbin needs to hear from you.
Okay, well, thank you again. Yeah, it's about 5 o'clock. We did start a bit late just to give people time. But yeah, I don't want to keep you much longer, Yanira. Thank you so much for all that you've shared. And thank you everyone who came out and participated and in this very informative webinar. Again, I will repeat that we have recorded it, and we have, I think, one question. Let me see. Somebody raised their hand.
I think it's Anne.
Yes, Anne Legg. Let me see, let me look her up. I'll allow her to talk since we are close out of time. And I will allow you to talk.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Yeah,
Yes.
my question is, does the new legislation do anything to protect people who may be coming under TPS in the future? Because temporary is temporary. I mean, it doesn't mean long-term. So what happens when the 12 months or 18 months is up and the people don't want to leave? Is there in that law something that would give them the opportunity and the right to apply to stay longer?
The Secure Act makes it. And we just participated, thank you for the question. And last week we participated in an event organized by Senator Chris Van Hollen from Maryland, who is the author of the Secure Act. And he said that Venezuelans will benefit if the bill becomes a law, and any further country that is designated with TPS. So under the Secure Act, which is in the Senate, yes, that's HR 6, it will have to be amended for future designations. At the moment is for those who already have it, and in the it is the Secure Act will be the best option.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I have to unmute myself. I have to unmute myself. Thank you again, Yanira and Alianza Américas by extension for all that you do. I just want to inform the folks at CRLN, it looks like we, CRLN, will become a part of Alianza Américas in the very near future. They are a very dynamic organization that has a good, deep-rooted history with grassroots organizations here in the United States and across Latin America. So we look forward to working with them and learning from them and collaborating with them. And thank you all who are here today and for being our engine of advocacy, all of you folks that are joined us today, and by extension, those that are behind you, as Yanira alluded to at the end of her discussion. Well, Yanira, thank you, and we look forward to collaborating with you again.